One of the most defining traits of Love Life Bluebird was the immersion via Twitter. Each character had their own Twitter account, and fun fact, before Bluebird was even officially revealed, people found these accounts dating to March/April, 2 months before the project officially started. Most of the plot and character moments were in these tweets, and depending on what girls you followed, you got to know them a little more. See Xion going through it. See my call up poke on Twitter, stuff like that. However, just a few weeks ago, it was announced that the character tweets and their accounts were going to be retired in favor of all the tweets just being put on the official Bluebird account. This caused a lot of skepticism, as a core part of Bluebird were the tweets, and many people wondered what direction the series is going to be going into, especially with the story. And just a few days ago, the official Bluebird account has uploaded an archive of all the character tweets, implying that it really is over. There's a lot to discuss here, and it requires some context of Bluebird's first live, so let's get into it. Alright, I just woke up, so don't mention my hair, but Bluebird has just done a decision that will probably affect the way it does content. And as someone who has, thoughts about how Bluebird has been doing their content, it both raises some, positive and some negatives, mostly because, if it's immersion and stuff like that, but let's actually fully get into it. Via my intro, I said that the character tweets were officially going to be dismantled, removed. It's gonna be not a thing anymore, and let me firstly show that first. So our first notification about this was thanks to my Azabu. I'm using Idol Story as a visual translation because it's way easier to just show instead of the Japanese. And according to Mai, all the Idol accounts will be migrating to the official Ikizu Live staff account as of next week. What do you think of this change? And what it essentially means, what this implying was that all the character tweets, individual character tweets, of the characters going through their lives, going through telling us what happens in our life, either be the plot and stuff like that, is going to be removed. And it's just all gonna be on the official Ikizu Live staff, where it's the professional format, advertising and stuff like that. Here's an announcement, new streams. It's gonna be all that formal language. We're not gonna get any of that. Well, at least as of right now, we're not gonna get any of that. Personal character information. Now, when Bluebird first started, the entire premise was around the character tweets. I mentioned in the intro, but when those character accounts were leaked, it was probably one of the biggest things ever, especially on Twitter, where new information was appearing all over the place in such a short amount of time. It made up Bluebird, and a lot of people speculated that Bluebird came from the Bluebird on actual Twitter, because the project was always intended to be on Twitter, which I do personally believe, but I do believe it's a double meaning of the Bluebird, the actual meaning of Bluebird. Put that up on screen. But the tweets have been something that we've been following for a very long time, pretty much a year, a year that I've been following them, and some amazing fans put the thing up here on the screen, have went out of the way to do stuff like fully archive the tweets, put them in a timeline, a summary. This is the coolest part of it, which just goes to show how much content there is within these character tweets, the personal stories, the occasional plot points that get it trending on Twitter because the muse. But it just goes to show how Bluebird's circle mainly consisted of these tweets and how it sort of pushed the story and the events. Not saying it didn't have anything else going on in terms of content, because if you go on the website, there's gonna be a bunch of content here, including the video journals, music and cover and stuff like that, but the majority of what we got was via the tweets. And just a few weeks after this tweet by Mai, where she was like, oh yeah, we're dipping out, we're gonna be switching to the official Bluebird account, they officially revealed and archived all the tweets, essentially confirming that the character tweets are in fact dismantled and they are no longer going to be a thing. And the first thing I want to say, I'm gonna give you a content warning on this. Close your damn eyes. It is so fucking bright. It is so fucking bright, and I don't mean to be rude in any way by this. This low-key mogs at this low-key mogs at this one. But you didn't hear it from me. Okay, maybe you did hear it from me. Also, you can see the moment I switch tabs, because it's so obvious why I'm on this tab. But now that the character tweets are gone, what does it mean for Bluebird? And again, like I said earlier, there was content beside the tweets, If we're gonna compare it to, old Love Life, it's essentially the equivalent of, the Dengeki-ji magazines about each of the characters, their stories and stuff like that, but just in a more modern format. And I did mention that in my original Bluebird Connection to Muse video, which shouts to Secret Sauce for helping out with that. And while I did appreciate the modern transition of the whole, Dengeki-ji character early stories to tweets that, be updated over time, provide more elaboration, I definitely knew that it wasn't everyone's cup of tea. Despite what you think about Bluebird's tweets, you can't deny that it was extremely important to what Bluebird was. And I think this marks the end of an era for this, because there was clearly some build to this. It didn't just randomly fucking explode and die, no. Using the translation tool here, there were some tweets before, they cut the character tweets off, where a lot of the characters reflected upon the past, reflected upon 1 year ago, where was I then? today, where am I now? You know, just you know, telling us, the audience, that, you know, I've grown, you know, all that kind of jazz. And I think it does make sense for the story to end here with, you know, the first live canonically taking place at Tonokizaka. And it sort of cuts off the real-time aspect of Bluebird, where the tweets are being updated in real time, which raises the question of what Bluebird is going to be doing now since they cut that form of content. This is probably the biggest point I do want to talk about here, because now that Bluebird has cut the character tweets, which were a way of updating us in real time, the way I'm going to be thinking about the series is incredibly different now. I don't know how it's going to be for you guys, but back when I was talking about Bluebird in both videos, streams, you know, discussions, either way, I always mentally compared them to Hasunosora, another real-time project, even though they're both kind of in things, but they have some similar aspects in terms of the real-time thing. But now that they're cutting it off, it leaves it in a state where it's more comparable to other Love Live groups, you know, the usual Muse, Aqua, Nijigasaki, Liela, where its content can be frozen in time, no matter the time gap. Like, obviously time will pass by, but they aren't gonna do the real time, like, guys, a week has passed. When, you know, it's been like a month or something like that. And here's the thing, I knew this was eventually going to happen, and I saw some people talking about it in Ikizu Live Cord. Put the advertisement here. I always had an internal thought that Bluebird was always going to cut off this real-time character tweets at some point. And the biggest reason for that is it did not seem like it was going to be something that was able to stay long-term, if that makes any sense. As the story keeps evolving and more plot points get introduced, both for the characters individually and, you know, the world building, I do not think putting it in a tweet format is probably the best way to go about it. And a lot of people have agreed on that, because sometimes there would be bombshells and just simple tweets like, what the fuck? You're introducing this in a Twitter tweet of all things? And while I think it's funny, you can't deny that it's sometimes a bit hard to follow because of that. And even more so, this fucking archive, which just goes to show how much information is being presented at once. And obviously, some of you guys are probably just in along for the ride, both for the characters and the plot, and that's completely fine. But it does make it a bit more hard to follow in a more general sense. I always treated the character tweets as the equivalent of the Denkeiji, like the early character stories like I mentioned earlier. Those stories were there to establish a character, give them a little depth, you know, character interactions, all that stuff, you know, understand who they are before, you know, getting fully fleshed out in, like, you know, a more different format akin to an anime. Now then, sorry for that little rant, but let me add a bit more on to why I think it was inevitable that Bluebird was going to delete the character tweets at a certain point. Back at Bluebird's first live, it was announced that 1, the story of Ikuzu depicting X, depicting Twitter, was going to be made into a book, and there's also going to be an visual comic production confirmed. I'm pretty sure there's a comic one right here. So from what we know already, the story of Bluebird is going to be depicted in different formats, ones that aren't real time, a book and a comic. Now, we don't know if the comics could be weekly or something like that, but I suspect that it might. Okay, here's my suspicion. I think it's just gonna be, you know, something akin to, you know, the Nijigasaki manga, the Nijigasaki of the Rebellion, which is a weekly comic, might be a slice of life, maybe it might show some plot details. I might just compare it to the Four Komas, actually. But I think for all of this, it was the natural conclusion of what was going to be happening with Bluebird's story. You could consider a lot of these, from a writing standpoint, the rough drafts of these characters, certain emotions they have, certain feelings they have, certain events they have, that will eventually form into, you know, something that isn't talking about, hey guys, so I did this today, you know, without, you know, you can show. I've always talked about with that music video, I'm pretty sure. I've always talked about music video, show, don't tell. Not saying you can't do tell, don't show, but the way tweets are simply made, it always gives a sense of implication / stuff that we don't know, because in Immersion, they're fucking tweeting this shit in real life, you know? And there's stuff that is shown internally that probably won't be expressed externally, like, you know, out loud in public. And that's why I praise the episodes of insert Bluebird character here for. I think as the Bluebird project goes on, they're going to be leaning the content that goes a bit more into this, the internal sides, because they've already put so much info into these characters, like a whole like I said, a whole year's worth of content. Each of these can be elaborated on in major ways. Not saying all of these are just potential, because on their own they're fine, but I do know for a fact that a lot of these can be enhanced, you know, maybe like a visual format, a comic, something like that. As sad as it is to lose that immersion, the character tweets, I do think it opens up new possibilities that can be, I don't know, it can probably maybe enhance the Bluebird story from like general scale. Like, I made a tweet about this saying it directly halts the immersion, low-key fucks up visually, especially when you're going back and trying to read the tweets, but my only hope is that we're slowly reaching the next step of Bluebird, because I always felt, like I said, this was a natural conclusion. This was going to happen eventually either way, especially when people are like, oh, we want an anime. Well, an anime isn't gonna be real time. One of the things I will praise Hasunosora for is when they made that movie, they were like, no bro, that's following the official timeline, go catch up on those episodes right now. And I mean, right now, with the character tweets still gone, we still get the video journal, still get the whole podcast thing, and we still got those mini satellite units for the whole Valentine's Day thing. How would you confess to the Ikizu Lab member? So I think these are gonna continue to keep happening, but in terms of character tweets and the plot, I feel like what they're doing right now is they're taking all this information, that was put in the tweets, and here's what I think. Here's my conspiracy theory. I think they're finally taking all this information and they're figuring out, okay, how do we take all these tweets, all this information, and put it to a new format? Maybe we can put in a whole character book, so that when we write the anime, we can be consistent with the character traits and their personalities. Because I personally think there's a bigger reason as to why they stopped making these tweets. I feel they don't want to have a case where they're, like, for example, writing an anime and new information comes out, they have to immediately, rush to change in the anime or something like that. Listen, I still believe in the anime or some form of media that, requires, things to be steady, not be constantly updated, like whole real time. That's personally what I think, and the whole reason I think that is because of certain tweets wondering about Bluebird's story. I have one here by Ari. So I'm sorry for exposing you like this, but you do bring up a good point. Even though the Twitter story is over, there are still plot threads that are still around. And I think plot threads like those will be resolved, just not in the character tweet format. Because there's a lot of potential in plot moments like these being shown in different formats that can maybe heighten the experience instead of it being in a tweet where you're like, oh yeah, well this happened, and we just have to imagine it. So if I'm gonna be completely honest, I think this was the right play. After having some time to think about it and talking in this video, I do think it was the right play. It's just a matter of, is Bluebird actually gonna take advantage of this? They're actually gonna do something with the tweets and stuff like that instead of just leaving it to rot, because if it's left to rot, then that would be probably one of the Bluebird's biggest fumbles. There is a lot Bluebird can do, and if it results in them just dropping the character tweets and doing nothing with it instead of transforming it into the more different format that I don't know, appeals to more general audiences, then I will be severely disappointed. But here's the thing, I don't think that's gonna happen simply because of the fucking episodes of. Listen, I'm always gonna praise this. This will always be the best part of Bluebird to me. Matter of fact, I'm gonna need you guys to read this right now. Look in the link in the description. Go read that shit right now. I've been having some really serious thoughts about Bluebird's story that I want to make a whole video essay on, but I'm still waiting for a few plot points. And with Bluebird cutting off the character tweets and potentially transform the story into a different format, which is what I suspect they're doing, since just you watched the video, you know what I said. I am cautiously optimistic about it, which is why I'm doing these sort of like off-script discussion videos rather than dedicating a full video essay to it, because I know for a fact it can change at any moment and completely devalue some of the words I've said, which is already what happened with some of my other videos, either be Hasunosora or Bluebird. But I am curious on what you guys think in regards to Bluebird cutting off his character tweets. I know some of you guys were way more invested than I was, so I'm more curious to hear your guys' thoughts about this. You guys don't get to follow the characters individually anymore. What if you were invested into what if you're invested in certain characters? Your only way you're gonna be able to figure out stuff about them is maybe if they appear in a video where they talk about their life, or you maybe made episodes of, but you're not gonna get that real time, this happened to me today. So what does that mean for you now? Are you gonna say Bluebird's over or some shit like that? But these videos that I'm making are simply rough drafts of what I think before I'm fully gonna compress them into, an actual Bluebird video essay that will take everything I've said and combine it into an actual format that is a bit more legible in a sense. In a way, you can't compare them to the Bluebird tweets, because I still do consider these to be rough drafts before we get into a different maybe finalized format that and I don't want to imply these tweets are rough drafts. They can't stand up on their own, because that's not what they're trying to do. They're supposed to be character immersions, but you can't help but think in the grand scheme of things in terms of Love Life that okay, especially come from my history with Love Life, for a fact that this is probably going to be compressed into an anime or some other form of content that is going to use these to structure the eventual final format. So I can't help but consider this a rough draft to what we will eventually get. That's what I think, though. I think it's a very interesting topic, and unfortunately a topic that probably won't stay around for too long, which is why I make this video, because after this point the character tweets are gonna be gone, and unfortunately I do not think it's gonna be that much of a topic point anymore, since we're all switching over to The official Bluebird account. It's definitely one of those things where I want to get my thoughts out now rather than later before it becomes a little bit irrelevant and maybe people in the future be like, huh, they were Bluebird character tweets? I only know them via the anime. You'd be like, oh my god. Make a video being like, a look back at the Bluebird character tweets or some stupid shit like that. Anyway, that's all I have to say for today. Make sure to leave your thoughts and comments down below. Maybe subscribe for when I eventually do make that Bluebird video essay video. It'll happen one day, I swear. And I will see you guys next time. My thoughts on Bluebird are constantly changing, and I really hope they do make the right decisions. Or at least the best decisions that they can possibly muster up. Last thing I want to see is them fumbling something up. Anyway, this is Noodle, and Noodle is officially out. Oh yeah, and just before I forget, I am officially re-advertising my Discord. It makes more sense to do it in a Love Life video. If you want to keep up with me in any way, either be my streams or my videos, feel free to check the link in the description and join and, I don't know, see Saras.